Let's dive right in. China has just implemented a staggering 125% tariff on U.S. imports, and this isn't an isolated move. The U.S. quickly responded with its own set of tariffs, escalating this trade battle even further. The financial stakes here are immense, billions of dollars, quite literally, hanging in the balance. And of course, we're not just talking abstract market numbers. These decisions have ripple effects that touch almost every corner of the economy. Let's take a look at this clip in which the president of China addresses the tariff trade war.
Overnight,
Play this clip.
China's Xi Jinping addressing the escalating trade war for the first time. According to Chinese state TV, Xi said China is, quote, not afraid. His comments come as President Trump raises his tariffs on Chinese goods to 145%. We have CNN's Mark Stewart joining us now from Beijing. Mark, we're hearing directly from China's leader here. What's the indication about how far they'll go?
Well, Audie, what's interesting is not the fact that China has retaliated yet again. It's very much part of its foreign policy. It's the fact that China has now said it's going to set a threshold, a ceiling, that it won't raise tariffs any more than what we have seen today, up to 125%. But also saying that if it needs to fight back further, it has countermeasures that it can use. The other thing which is very interesting is that if we look at some of the statements that we're getting from China's Ministry of Commerce, the office that is responsible for raising the tariffs, it's almost mocking, making fun of the United States for raising the stakes, the numbers in all of this so high. Let me share with you a statement that came out late today here in Beijing. A spokesperson saying that this is nothing more than a numbers game with no real economic significance, going on to say this is a practice of weaponizing tariffs as a tool of bullying and coercion, turning itself into a joke. So China standing very resolute, saying that it will fight back, but it's not going to get into this numbers game. The other big headline of the day is that we're also hearing from Chinese leader Xi Jinping. He was meeting today with the Spanish Prime Minister, and that's where we have now heard his first remarks, really, since this tariff war has escalated to such a high level. You mentioned the headline phrase that China is not afraid. He also went on again to say that there are no tariffs in a trade war and that China will stay focused and concentrate on itself. He also made reference to the fact that China and Europe are both global economies and that they are supporters of free trade, yet another jab at the United States. So Xi Jinping has now spoken. A lot of people have also been bringing up this idea about a phone call between Xi Jinping and President Trump. In fact, it was over the last 48 hours or so that we heard from the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, suggesting this happened. But Audie, this is not something that China will likely do. The Chinese government really prefers on having backdoor diplomatic conversations before raising it to a level where Xi Jinping and Donald Trump would have a conversation.
CNN's Mark Stewart in Beijing. Thanks.
When temporary resolutions have been reached, they've seemed more like Band-Aids than actual fixes. What we're witnessing now is the chronic problem growing worse. Now, let me bring this down to the level where it hits home, because I think it's easy to get lost in the big numbers and jargon. Take small businesses, for example, especially technology importers. They're facing skyrocketing costs just to get their hands on the goods they need. Imagine being a local shop owner who sells, say, electronic accessories. Those higher tariffs, they're eating directly into your profit margins, driving up prices for your customers, and sometimes even forcing you to switch suppliers altogether. It's a gamble. And I think we sometimes forget that these policies aren't just hitting big corporations. They're impacting real people, real livelihoods. Let me paint a clearer picture of how all this plays out, because it's not just headline drama, it's real life. The agricultural sector, for instance, is being hit like never before. Farmers are trapped in this vicious cycle, with retaliatory tariffs slashing their overseas market access. And then they're staring down rising costs for equipment like tractors, which are directly tied to manufacturing tariffs. It's like every angle is against them right now. And manufacturing, well, it's hardly faring better. Think about the parts and raw materials that come from global suppliers. The tariff hikes are adding layers of expense that ultimately have to be absorbed somewhere down the line. It's either coming out of the consumer's wallet or it's squeezing the company's already thin margins. Did you know that economists are estimating potential GDP losses from all this? One figure I came across suggests several percentage points shaved off growth, which honestly is just staggering. Then there's consumer electronics. Prices on everything from smartphones to laptops are spiking. Imagine walking into your favorite tech store and realizing that the same gadget you were eyeing last year now costs, what, 10%, 20% more. It's the kind of thing that creeps into daily life until it feels almost normal. But make no mistake, it's directly linked to these policies. But it's not just dollars and cents we're talking about here, is it? No, the real cost goes much deeper. I think about Jamie Dimon's recent comments. He warned of significant risk to the global economy if these disputes drag on. And honestly, it's not hard to see what he means. Prolonged uncertainty? That stresses families. It stresses entire communities. Small businesses are being disrupted. Supply chains are chaotic. And that stress, it trickles down. Health professionals are seeing increases in anxiety, depression, a direct correlation to the financial strains people are living under. Now, here's the part we often overlook. When people lose jobs or face spiking prices, it's not just their wallets that take a hit. It's their mental health, their sense of security. Communities most affected by these economic shifts often see a ripple effect, with everything from rising clinic visits to worsening public health metrics. And it's so easy to treat this trade war, this whole saga, as just policy battles between nations. But at its core, it's a series of personal battles playing out for millions of individuals. So let's take a step back here. What's really going on behind all these tariffs and counter tariffs? Well, China has been pretty vocal about what they're calling economic bullying by the U.S. These aren't my words. They're straight from the Chinese government. With their 125% tariffs on American imports, they're sending a message. This isn't just about trade. It's about power, influence, and defining who gets to set the rules of global commerce in the 21st century. The Biden administration, on the other hand, has taken a very calculated stance. President Biden, for instance, has framed these American tariffs as a way to protect U.S. workers and reduce dependence on foreign suppliers. And yes, on paper, this sounds, like a noble objective. But if you dig a little deeper, this strategy isn't exactly new. Historically, protectionist policies have popped up during uncertain times, almost like a reflex to protect what's ours. But here's the thing. History also shows us they tend to have unintended, often harmful consequences. Think back to the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act during the Great Depression. That didn't exactly end well for the global economy, did it? Now, zooming out, the ripple effects here are staggering. For instance, the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, is already lowering its global growth forecasts. And by the way, it's not just the U.S. or China feeling the heat here. Asian markets, which are so interconnected with both economies, are bracing for major disruptions. Supply chains are fragmenting. And I gotta tell you, the words economic decoupling are being thrown around more and more lately. That's a whole other can of worms, because decoupling isn't just theoretical. It's actively happening in these escalations. Certain sectors, especially tech, are already seeing a kind of fortress mentality take hold, where each side is trying to outbuild and outdevelop the other. And let's not forget how fragile globalization itself becomes through all of this chaos. I mean, it's one thing to hear about shifting trade norms on the news, but if this trend continues, a splintering of alliances, these economic battle lines being drawn, it fundamentally risks the kind of interdependence that has, ironically, kept much of the world relatively stable for decades. Trade wars like this, they're not just temporary fights. No, they're laying the groundwork for a very different and much more uncertain future. And that brings us to the end of today's journey on the Real 411. I want to take a moment, really just pause, and thank each and every one of you for tuning in. It's your curiosity, your engagement that keeps conversations like these alive and meaningful. If today's episode gave you something to think about, challenged your perspective, or even just got you to raise an eyebrow, I'd love it if you'd share that with us. Drop a comment, subscribe, follow us on our social media pages, because your voice, it truly matters. Better yet, sign up for our email newsletter so you're always the first to know when we dive into another deep, thought-provoking topic. And if you're someone who believes, as I do, in the importance of independent media that dares to dig deeper, tell the truth, and empower listeners just like you, consider supporting us on Substack and Fanbase. We've got free and paid subscription options, and even the smallest gesture goes a long way in helping this platform stay strong, sustainable, and unflinchingly real. So, as we wrap up, remember this. The story is never just the headline. Each ripple, each nuance matters more than we realize. Stay informed, stay bold, and above all, stay real. Until next time, this is Dr. Chelsea McGee, signing off from the Real 411. Take care, everyone.